Yeah, I know.
Yeah, you already know. It's Kappa Kappa, young millionaires, the general. Okay, I wake up every day, I'm feeling good, I'm feeling great. Every day I'm getting paid, man, this life is going great. I just wanna celebrate, I made it in and out of state. $1,000,000 in the case, I got it hidden somewhere safe. I multiply all my millions and really I am extremely wealthy. I distributed my millions with my family. This is just the beginning, I purchased a Lamborghini. Driving around the city, believe me, you haven't seen me. Made it through all the struggle, defeated all of my rivals. I was never entitled, I had to fight for survival. Man, this life is amazing, it's crazy the way we made it. Now I'm living my dreams and I'm barely just getting started. I made it through the struggle back when I was very worried. Now I'm chilling, get my condo, Lamborghinis and Bugatti. I know you in a hurry, but I promise don't be worried. When you see me in the club, I probably got enough to party. I'm a multi-millionaire, getting money everywhere. I ain't tripping on nobody, I just came to celebrate. Yeah, we got the party popping, got the general over here, throwing money in the air, cause we get it every day. I multiply all my millions, now me and my people winning. Moving city to city, I promise that you will see me driving a Lamborghini, but this is just the beginning. $1,000,000 Bugatti, I'm stacking money in the ceiling. Multiply all my millions, now me and my people winning. Moving city to city, I promise that you will see me driving a Lamborghini, but this is just the beginning. $1,000,000 Bugatti, I'm stacking money in the ceiling.
What's up, guys?
And you're on.
We got the general.
Hey.
We got the general live here from Cabo San Lucas. You got the Big John. You got Carson and Nikki G in Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a lot more cold weather than I am at.
Definitely.
What's up, guys?
7 inches.
How's it going? You're looking good. I can see a reflection in your sunglasses of paradise.
That's exactly it, baby. That's exactly it. What's up, Nikki G? What do you guys got? What are you guys talking about life?
Blessings, man. I think about you when you're gone, and I'm like, man, this guy's got blessings on top of blessings on top of blessings. So I love it because it's just inspiring, and you inspire me, and I'm super grateful to just be in your presence. And you know, when I went and saw you before the day you left, I don't know, I left there just so fucking excited, and I didn't even know what I was excited about. I was just hyped up on your energy and just in your presence and in your man cave, and I was like, wow, you know. I think about when I used to go cruising through Penasco, and never did I even know there was a gem sitting out there. And now I'm like sitting with you and just, I don't know, you light me up, and I'm super grateful. So I'm glad you're out there, because I know after everything going on and your mom, I'm sure you really needed the reset and the vacation, and, you know, self-love and self-resets are super important. So I'm glad you're out there and, you know, taking care of yourself.
I'm actually moving and shaking. We're looking for opportunities out here. So, you know,
Hey.
you know what I mean, which is an awesome thing. But absolutely. We had Nikki G sitting on the thinking couch one day. Well, we were sitting on the walnuts couch. The
Now I'm
real
like
special
sitting with
cows.
you and just, I don't know, you like.
Yeah.
Put the fire. Well, I'm really excited today about today's topic and we're about to talk about. And John, what do you kind of you got that popped up on the screen?
Yeah, yeah. So, I sort of gave it a topic name of, are you okay with average? And let me give you the long thing that she started. Telling yourself that it's okay to be average because the fear of failure will be your own worst defeat.
Absolutely. And the reason we've kind of touched this in the past, but I think it's so important to reiterate something that could just damage you, right? I think one of the things whether I travel internationally or I'm in town or just around, a lot of people are really okay with just sitting at the average level. And what's really scary is psychologically, their psyche, they've told themselves that staying in average is a safe zone so that they don't have to face failure, so that they don't have to dream bigger, right? And so one of the things that you always think about is someone will make a very quick statement like, I want to be rich. Well, or I want to be a better basketball player, or I want to be in really good shape, but it's not really defined. There's no such thing in being rich. What does that mean to you? Do you want to have $1,000, $10,000? Do you want to make 5 million a year? Do you want 100 million in the bank? What does that mean? And we really have to get that definitive answer in our mind so that we can actually start working towards that instead of this lackadaisical. But the scary part is most people ain't even going to take that opportunity. They're just going to sit there and say, that's not for me. I'm happy here. Lots, a lot of crazy stuff like that. And I think that's kind of the topic that I want to touch. And so you're sitting here, I pretty much have made my destiny exactly how I want it to look like, right? So I've set up my freedoms to allow me to be able to do what I want to do.
I love that.
Yeah, no, I think that's that. When you start to make those choices that affect outcomes, I think that makes all the difference in the world. There's a lot of circumstances that are push factors against that, so.
And a lot of people know what they don't want. A lot of people say, a general idea, but it's not really defined and honed in. It's like very broad. And I think that's important that you say you really need to get that defined answer about what it is you truly want. You can't just, say, I want to be successful. What do you want to be successful at? And what level of success you want to be in? So I think that's where you really separate the average from, people that really push to greatness, is really defining that answer. So you're walking directly towards that. So I love that. Above average, baby.
I think the thing about Winston, what do you got to say?
I agree 100%. I mean, it's one of the sayings that I've always said: you can never build a house without no blueprints, right? So when someone goes and makes a statement, that's the same thing I'm teaching into Aiden is, when you set a goal for something, go and backtrack. And how are you going to get to that destination? You can't get on a boat and say, oh, I just want to go to the other side of the world. Well, okay, do you have your destination mapped out and planned? Because if not, who's going to be the captain leading the boat, and where is it going to end up if you have no destination in the long run? So making a statement and saying, I want to be wealthy, successful. I'm a big believer in putting things out in the universe and being as detailed and as precise as you can be in any of those statements that you put out there and manifest for yourself. That's what you're going to get. So when you start saying things so broad, it kind of confuses your mind and confuses the manifestation that you're putting out. So for one person to say, hey, each week I want to go ahead and, make $1,500 a week or whatever the case may be. And that's backtracking to go to their long run and saying at the end of the year, this is how much I want to gross. For example, if we're talking from a money aspect or whether it's a weight training aspect or anything like that, without knowing the day in, day out tasks of what it takes you to get to the ultimate goal, you're really not going to get there because you don't know the fundamentals and you don't know the formula to put in to get the end result. So I agree 100%.
I think let's talk a little bit about that mind aspect portion of it and actually setting up those goals and stuff. John, I think for yourself being an educator, what goals were you setting when you were going after these degrees? Or what was it for you in that portion of that specific subset?
You know, I think things that affect my life changed how I wanted to sort of feed my mind. I know, I've been an educator now for 23 years, but I know in the last 10 years, I can say these last 10 years have been better as far as enriching my mind and wanting that, than say the first 13, and I love part of it because I love this technological age, because I'm not a learner that reads. To fault myself, I don't read novels. I don't read books.
Yeah.
Like that's not
right.
me. I could never have a library that you could sit there and brag about because that's not me. But if you look at my YouTube history, I watch videos on Crash Course, and sometimes I'll watch 10, 20 videos on chemistry or on architecture, or just weird things that I want to learn about. And that's my library. That's not that I can't really put on the wall. But if you look at my YouTube history or you look at my websites that I look at, that's what I've done to grow my mind.
Right. And that's kind of like the modern day society is what it's at. And I mean, that's why we're seeing so much, even so much more opportunity. You're seeing little kids make $1 million a year just doing, you know what I mean? But because
play with their toys,
that's kind of where it's come. But I know that kind of starts off topic, but I just want to chime in because it is, it's the modern day library, if you would, you know what I mean? Everything is at the tip of our fingertips to go in and research. It's not so much having to go into, an encyclopedia or open up a phone book or anything like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, but what I see is the biggest obstacle to say a young person's mind is their parents. I can see their parents as being an obstacle because they start to ingrain into their kids, well, let's make excuses rather than find solutions.
Yeah.
I see it now. I'm helping several kids in different subjects, and I see such foundational things, or like your analogy of blueprints. Well, there was no blueprint. Now they're doing a certain level of math and they skipped all the other parts of the building that they didn't even work on.
Right.
So that part of the mind, seeing, so from a personal aspect, I love the last 10 years. Like I said, reiterating on that is access to technology and access to knowledge. And I tell that to parents. I go, okay, well, what seeds are your kids sowing? Now, if it's just Fortnite and that's all they're doing is play video games, those things are.
They better be streaming that to make some money,
exactly. And my kid does those things, but he also sows other seeds.
Yeah, you have to. And I think that's one thing for me, touching on that topic. I think, and just for a lot of kids, if they're just going to school and going back and doing nothing, then the curriculum that they're teaching in school it's missing so much. And I think, when you go in, I used to have the conversation with Jack. I'm like, well, yeah, it makes no sense. I'm going in and cutting a frog. You know what I mean? But I want to learn how to run a business, not what the inside of a frog looks like. You know what I mean? So it's really on what you're doing with the extra time. And that's why I think sports was a big thing for me, because it ingrained that discipline, you know what I mean? And consistency and hard work. And those are other little things that took my, day-to-day experience in the real world, other than knowing what the inside of a frog looks like. And not necessarily that, but in meaning, it's such a broad spectrum.
I understand that. I understand that completely. And this is the dilemma that I struggle with education, is that, the purpose of it, and you probably remember when we studied the Renaissance, you want that person to be a Renaissance, and we won't use just a man, just a Renaissance person, to where you're well-rounded. Yeah. And back in the Renaissance, they appreciated men that could ride a horse and work with a sword, and were able to build things and could read and, could play music. And that's how our modern educational system is set up, is that we have the core areas that we want you to study.
And what's strange is those topics are electives.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know.
where it can be a trade like wood shop, you know what I mean? Or tech, like if you wanted a computer class or anything, that's an elective. It's not, you know what I mean?
But do you understand the reason for that diversity is so that you can kind of, even though it's kind of a ship that's chugging down the same river, but there's different lanes that you can take.
Of course,
So
of course.
That's my, and I have tons of issues with education, but that's the reason when I sort of side with them and say, well, that's the reason we have electives.
Yeah.
And
that's what the good thing is, because it gives you somewhat a taste of that. But one thing I wish it did have is electives to go in, and I've said it before to where it's like, yeah, I want to know engineers make a lot of money, but then it's like, do you really want to know what it takes to be an engineer? You know what I mean? And a lot of kids, I have someone in my family who wanted to be an engineer, and he went to the schooling and he was like, this is way too freaking hard. You know what I mean? But if they would have gone in doing a little more research into it, or knowing hands-on on day-to-day what a certain type of engineer does, maybe they could have weeded that out and not wasted, student loans or time or anything going through the process and saying, this isn't for me. And that's what sucks, right? Because we can't get time back.
Oh, no. No, I don't. That's what I mean, for the last 10 plus years, like Eric Strauss and I, we always used to bring it up there. Like, we'd go to services and they'd say, well, how can we fix education? Well, number one, quit making it so structured so that you have a kid in the 11th grade forcing them to know algebra 2 when that's for a kid that's not going to go to college. It doesn't benefit them. Let them take consumer math or, practical skills, mathematics, so that they can still graduate from high school, but they can apply that into their regular life.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Or
yeah, I don't think I've used algebra 2 at all since I left high school.
Yeah, I know. I mean, but you do use algebra though, right?
Yeah.
You do use algebra.
Yeah.
And some parts, maybe even geometry when you're figuring out square footages and stuff. So little basic things. But all it is mathematics that they want to just try and trick you. But my point of it is they need to restructure senior year so that you are doing those internships.
Yeah, exactly.
So that you can go, you know what, the second half of your senior year, you go and you shadow a real estate agent to see what their job is like. You go for another month. And if you want to be an engineer or you want to be a pharmacist, you want to go see what you have to do for that, so that kids have an opportunity to just do, like you said, to get that taste of it.
And there is a school. I had one of my friend's kids reach out to me to shadow me because it was part of one of his projects with school. So I think he had to do it. They still told me he had to do it for like 6 weeks, and we didn't end up doing it because right when he was supposed to start, that's when COVID hit. So it was like, and then he didn't even have a senior year really. So, but it's cool to see that, and it was a private school. But it's cool to see that schools are starting to get a grasp of that, and
especially
and do it.
More and more kids now are taking that gap year, and delaying entering college.
Yeah.
Colleges need to push back on high schools and say, hey, you guys need to do a better job of giving these kids opportunities to feed their mind, to give them tastes of things so that they don't.
Yeah, because it's an investment. It's basically the kid's first investment, because I know so much people that have student loan debt up the wazoo, you know what I mean? And they're having to go and backtrack. So where are they going to get the most out of the loans that they're getting? You know what I mean? If they are getting those, or the most out of their scholarships, whatever the case may be.
Yeah. I mean, so
I think to touch on that. I think the main situation about it is really understanding your subset, right? So I hear so many times people are like, you know what, I want to get in technology. Well, that's just an broad fucking word. Or I want to get in computers. What does that mean to me? Well, that doesn't make any sense. And I think that if you really understood what you're getting into, you're going to start doing it since you're young, right? And that's why internships, but what's even bigger than that is really shadowing somebody at a very young age, like an apprentice. That's why apprentice programs are so huge. So like in Carson's instance of his cousin getting into engineering, well, we know that the basis of engineering is all high-level mathematics. So letting him go to these pre-courses and saying you're going to do this, but you can't pass calculus, and you didn't do calculus in high school, the chances of you getting through engineering school is going to be, you're going to be fighting uphill. It doesn't say it can't be done, but you're going to be fighting uphill. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing is, when you're talking about I want to get into computers, well, what side of it? The hardware side? So I understand, okay, well, there's no money in building computers. Dell has that already built. HP, all these are box companies. But understanding that metric, are we talking on the hardware side of networking? How do I connect all these computers? There's a lot of money in that world. That's the world that I'm in, right? Hardware engineering. And then there's the aspect of application. And that's what we call computer science. Very high level mathematics. You're going to have to learn programs. You're doing C++, all that. There's not a broad. You're never going to meet a guy that's going to be amazing application writer and then a hardware guy. It's just, I've never seen it. I've gotten pretty close, but I suck at applications. So the piece of it is really breaking that down, that curriculum. But I think where it comes down to is again what understanding what's out there. So I'll give you a perfect example. In our state, we got business development people. Why
I froze. Okay, so Jack is talking to us from Cabo San Lucas, and he's actually having to go along. He's having to use his data to get across. We'll see if he comes back in on us. But Nikki,
you're still a statue, dude.
you're still frozen, but we heard your voice there. So Nikki, what would you say about like the mind part of it? How do you think you sort of?
we had a blip there. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. You're still frozen visually.
Mr.
All
Freeze.
right, am I back in the game here?
I can come off your screen. And we can go with your audio. So
No, I came back in the game here. I think. Am I here?
we can hear your audio.
Your sound is, but your video's not. You could keep going though.
Keep talking.
All right, sounds good. That's all right. You guys know what I look like: big, tall, and handsome.
Heavy. We lost you again, Nikki G.
Yes. I'm gonna until he comes back on, I'm gonna talk about mindset. So the biggest thing is like your mind is the battlefield. And I never understood what that was when I was told that when I was younger, and it was by a coach of mine. And so I think what made me one of the biggest athletes in my, area and stuff is I used to do a lot of visualization before games, during games, and also, just really visualizing in my mind how I wanted things to go. Like I saw the ball going in, I saw these like scenarios. So my biggest thing with your mind as a battlefield, what I learned over the years is that our mind gets in our way most of the time. One of the audiobooks that I heard recently really talked about our monkey mind, and like we really create these roadblocks for us by certain mindset things. A lot of people are really quick. I think it's like a mechanism. So I had a conversation with I don't know if he's even listening to this. It was kind of random. I was walking out of my truck, and the sheriff comes around the corner, and he's like, Nicole. And I kind of was like, what the heck is going on? And then he's like, Nikki. And I'm like, okay, now this is getting weird. And I'm just staring at him like a deer in headlights carrying grocery bags. And he goes, are you Nikki Gonzalez? And I'm like, yes. And in my mind, I'm like, did I not pay a ticket? I'm like, I haven't even drove anywhere. But he's like, I went to high school with you. So we had this big conversation, and he had started a plumbing and heating business out in, I believe it was like Arizona or California. Well, he tried to bring the business back to New Mexico. And he's like, the people here really don't want to pay for stuff like that. And I was all, listen, I'm going to tell you something. And I told him like this because I thought about Jack. I said, here's my one free advice, right? I was like, you can pay me for more. I said, the reason why the people here aren't buying from you is because we're so trained to dismiss anything that's out of our programming, to dismiss anything that's out of our culture, and just anything that's foreign, we shut it down. We shut it down fast. We shut it down hard. I said, but you got to figure why they shut it down. I said, these people are not educated on what you're telling them, what they need to buy. I said, but if you go to these same old people and the same people you're talking about, and you educate them and you make them feel like they have the upper hand because now they understand what the fuck you're talking about. I said, then you come back with the sell. And he was like, I didn't even think about that way. I'm like, think about your grandparents every time. Go try to sell them a Wii. They're not going to buy it. Let them play the Wii. Let them get excited about the Wii. Then they'll buy it. I said, so as New Mexicans, we really have to learn our culture. And, I was planning on leaving. I'm not going to lie. I was planning on leaving New Mexico, and I was going to travel and be this fucking rock star. And then working with Jack, I'm like, he's so fucking smart. He took his home state and he's killing it. He can go to any state and killing it. But now he's like the king of the fucking castle here. So I'm like, me, getting off the lily pad and trying to create a foundation on the floor, because that has stuck in my head so bad, because I've literally been on a lily pad my whole life because I think I was afraid to settle down. Even when I worked at all these big companies, I was afraid for that commitment, right? Because it was a mindset thing.
Right.
But why can't I kill it here? Because I'm already well known. I have everything set into play, and I could still travel and grow internationally from a strong rooted root. And working with you guys have really like embedded that in me, because I'm not going to lie. There's days I met a guy the other day, and he knew Jack, and he offered me a dope job at the labs. And I was just like, tempted, that
Yeah.
to go back to comfortability. And then I came at him like, my time freedom does not have a price tag, and not even you or the labs could afford me. And he stepped back like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay. And I said, because right now where I'm at, I've worked out so hard in my mindset with that battlefield, and I've overcome those things that now it's just like kind of like that story of like the guy digging for diamonds.
Right.
And there's one guy that stops right before that last layer. I can tell that come the end of this year that something major is going to happen for me, because it's only mathematical choices. They happen, right? So it's just like our mind is so powerful. It's either going to make you or it's going to break you. Today, I did not want to work out. I hate being cold. I was miserable. And I thought about it because I found out I wasn't winning in the competition. And instead of getting mad, it really lit my fire.
Yeah.
So I was like, I bet you those winners that are on the top 3 are drinking hot chocolate, getting cozy. So I ran in the snow.
Yeah.
I, shoveled my RV, and then I did Insanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, because I heard a video the other day, and it's like when I find myself not wanting to do something that I know is good for me,
Yeah.
then that's when you push harder.
Mm-hmm.
That's the sign that that's what you have to fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when the battlefield comes in, because at the end of the day, sports, money, success, anything, our mindset is what separates everything, right?
Yeah. For
So
sure.
when we pass that uncomfortability is when it does. My friend Kimball that I worked with at Fender, he would always put me quotes, right? And he'd always bring them to me, or he'd put them on his thing, because every morning we cheers and he played me a reggae song. And he tells me, pearls are only polished like friction. And he said, learn to enjoy the fucking friction. And he used to tell me this, and I was like, what does this mean? But now that it makes sense,
Yeah.
it's like, that's where we really level up, is that uncomfortability.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Because it's change.
it's
You know what I
crazy.
mean? It's change. And that's what we don't like,
Yeah.
to be honest. And that's why me and Jack always use weightlifting as an analogy for everything, pretty much success in life, because it's the same thing. Sometimes you want to push heavier weight, and sometimes you got to take the risk of knowing that it might fall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's just what it is. It hurts. It sucks. And then when you're comfortable with the weight on the bench or something, or getting 10 to 12 reps on one thing, and then you have to level up, and it's like, oh shit, now I have to start all over and go with 6 each time, and I got to wait another month so I can get comfortable with this weight, and then do it all over again.
Yeah.
But that's what ultimately gets you to that goal in the long run. And at times it sucks.
Yeah.
And a lot of people say, oh, you have to enjoy the process. And I'm like, when I'm in the mud, I do not like it.
Yeah.
But when I'm at the mountaintop and I'm like, oh yeah, that now I understand. Like, it was totally worth it or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's sometimes with those things, I'm like, nah, I don't agree with that. I can't enjoy this process because this is the suck right now. But it's paying dues.
At the edge of that is
Yeah.
paradise.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
so crazy.
Exactly. And I was watching this interview with I think it was Steve Harvey and Mark Cuban. And he was like, if you could go back and tell yourself, give yourself any advice. And he's like, just know it's hard and you're going to fail a lot. But he's like, understand, the more you fail, you really only need to get whatever you're going after right one time. If you get it right one time, and that's when everyone says, oh, so-and-so is an overnight success and blah, blah, blah. But no one ever knew about all the failures that he had gone through. And that's why a lot of people told him that. And he's like, you only have to get it right one time. And it may take you 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. But once you get it right once, then that's where it is.
Yeah.
But it's one thing I've always said, universe and God won't reward you for just because. Does it happen? Maybe. Yeah. But you'll see people hit the lotto and then they go broke because they're not prepared. Their mind's not ready to have all that. And that's why you'll see a lot of them just waste everything
overnight.
Yeah. And then the next thing you know, they're in debt because they didn't give any money to the taxes.
Absolutely.
So it's one of those things, and everything that we go through, I feel, in our end route, everything's already planned and we're supposed to be somewhere where we're supposed to be. But everything we're going through is building us to be prepared for the next success or the next even failure.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of things too where this could have been some of the worst days of my life, but if those wouldn't have happened,
you wouldn't be who you are today.
I wouldn't. Exactly. And just like,
You there, General? Can you hear us?
I
Jack.
can hear you guys. I'm back here in the thing.
We missed you. So
I was sitting over here by the ocean, man.
You know what? I'd rather switch places with you, have Wi-Fi connection problems, and be there in Cancun than.
Yeah, because it's freaking cold out here. I
should've
got a
seen me.
beanie on. I'm suited and booted for the cold.
I was side wheeling trying to get out of my driveway because there was so much snow on my truck.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wasn't too good. So
But
Hey, you guys have to hold down. You have to hold down the floor heavy over there because it's fucking the connection's heavy. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm sitting over here enjoying myself.
yeah, that's what it's all about.
You got to take a longer string in a soup can.
Exactly.
so Jack,
But I think kind of.
before we
Go
go on
ahead,
the
Nikki.
before we go on the next topic, I want to let you know that one of the quotes that I said that it took me years to learn is, your mind is a battlefield. So before we go on to the next subject, like, what do you feel? What's the most strongest element of your mind for success? Before we move on.
I think for me, Nikki G, what it's been in my life is I don't even like accept defeat. I look at it in my mind like, oh, okay, I just don't look at defeat and start dwelling on it. I just focus on where did I fucking come out short and what do I gotta do to turn up to the next level. So I think my main mind strength is I'm wired. It's funny because we're out here gambling, right? We're playing with the guys, and I've had some like $1,800 nights, and they're like, if someone pays you $1,000 to lose, would you do it? And I said no, because my mind's not even wired that way to accept defeat. So I think in my mind, have I failed? Yeah, a shitload of times. Have I been defeated? Yes, but I've never lost an awards. And so I just don't accept defeat or failure in my mind. It's just not even in there. I see it as something else.
I think that's what makes you so powerful is a lot of people, at the end of the day, defeat and loss is just a word that holds a vibrational state. So like your vision of it changes everything of it. So like if you hold fear and defeat at such like a high pedestal, then it's going to weigh heavy when you get it. And when you just see it as like a speed bump, it's just something that, it's that sign from the universe. Like, what did I do wrong and how can I do better? And I think that's awesome because that's the game changer on everything is the way you view what happens to you. Some people view success and then they give up. I did it, right? But like you look at all the levels of success you had is like you kept leveling up every time you leveled up. And I said that I think that's what really, defines us on how far we go is like when you lose, do you continue? When you win, do you continue? And those are two different animals,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, it's so true though. Like I've seen people like, look at me when I was like 20 years old, only like 2 of us girls graduated from college. I was in my field. I was doing good. And I could have just been at that job. My friend Vanna, I'm sorry, Vanna, but she worked there for years after I left.
Mm-hmm.
And when I came back, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's been in that same damn cubicle. Maybe they gave her an office, but like that was her settle. Like she was okay. Now she has a killer job. She's working for the government on a higher level. But for me, when I hit those levels, I never stopped moving
Mm-hmm.
because then I would have been like, it's easy to get relaxed when you get a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of have a fear of paychecks now because it's like, do I trade my freedom for a paycheck or do I write my fucking paycheck?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I want.
I get that.
Are you there, Jack?
Absolutely. And I think that's what I'm talking about. Most people, fucking settle for a fucking Snickers bar. When ultimately it's like, that's not really a little taste. That's not, you're setting the wrong vibration out there. I think in life for me, I don't call it vibration. I'm like, you got to let God know what you want. You got to be convicted of what you want. And I think that for me, I'm always convicted. I was sitting out here now and said, I can kind of bit laid back, and I'm like, holy fuck, look what I've accomplished in my life. I'm sitting here in this fucking amazing golf resort, or kind of looking at life, and I got this fucking house, and I'm like, wow, it rents out. There's a lot of things, but am I going to just say, oh, I'm not going to, this is it. This is a big time. Well, now I'm like, no. But I'm over here plotting what's the next move. What am I going to do to level up to the next level?
Yes. That's a checkers player to a chess player right there.
Mm-hmm. Which
no matter what I'm doing out here, I'm not just relaxing. I'm over here. I'm still. My mind and my body still. But I'm in here planting and saying, okay, let's go to the next move. And what I realized is when I was just kind of sitting about, we're going to talk about this whole thing with the resources, right? You know, I'm sitting here with my friend Derek, and he's probably the most strategic gambler I have ever met in my entire life. And we're playing cards, and he was saying, holy shit, you become a badass woman to a mathematical mind. I see patterns. But he taught me the strategy and the whole thing of gambling. And gambling is really, it's really balls and bankroll. That's what is the power behind gambling, right?
Definitely.
And there is a little bit of a strategy. But what I've learned is that how to apply it. Well, I got with the best resource I had in my pocket and said, I'm going to mirror this guy. I'm going to have him teach me everything he knows. And I pretty much learned to make, you got to think about this, 4 big internal family poker games, or 5, Vegas. And as of from COVID to now, I know I'm 29,000 of wins from January to now in gambling.
Nice.
Right?
Mhm.
So you look at that, and it's about maximizing my resources, maximizing what's around me, who can teach me get to the next level, right?
Yeah, definitely. But I think that becomes the theme almost of every show that we talk about here, is that you want to be able to seek out, find people that are strong in those areas and try to grow off their wisdom.
Mhm. Exactly. That's what it's about. And that's how you learn. Unless you're going to learn the hard way, then you're going to hit it big. Jack's going to be making 29,000 when he's 90 years old. You know what I mean? But that's just how it goes with anything. I mean, we got to go through the experiences, one, or we need a mentor or someone with the experience to say, hey, look, here's where I lost.
Yeah.
And here's where you'll lose too. But if you go this way, you'll jump ahead. You know what I mean? And that's what it's about, in passing the information and knowledge down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what builds people to become great. And that's what builds people to break down barriers. And that's what sets records and different things like that, you know?
Yeah, there's a new movie. It's called Love and Monsters, and there was a part that just talked about that,
Mhm.
because there's a part that says, you know, this older mentor's trying to give this younger kid advice about instincts,
Mhm.
and instincts just don't come along.
Yeah.
They develop from minor mistakes.
Mhm.
You know, you don't duck something, you don't dodge a punch just instinctually. You have to train yourself to do those things.
Yeah.
You have to gain that wisdom from
Or
somebody
you got to get
else.
punched first before you know you have to dodge it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Or
You know,
else
so
it's like a story when the parents tell their kids, you know, don't touch the fire.
you know,
Don't touch it. It's going to hurt.
Mhm.
And they're like, what does that even mean? What does fire feel like? You know what I mean? And then they're like, oh, don't touch that. You know?
Yeah,
So that's
no.
kind of how it is. Sometimes you got to go through stuff too.
yeah, instincts don't come along. They're just not gifted. You're not born with instincts.
Yep.
You develop things through minor mistakes, and hopefully they're not catastrophic mistakes.
And hopefully it only happens once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
the biggest thing. And that's
Mhm.
kind of what Jack was talking about earlier, is that, you know, when you do have those mistakes or failures or whatever you want to call them, it's about what did you learn from it? And don't let that happen again, because you know exactly what it was that got you in that situation. You know, there were some stuff that I did last year, not bad, but I look back and some things I would have bought, or some stupid crap I spent money
That
on.
staying in average is
You
a
know-
safe zone so that they don't.
Sorry about that.
Oh, I thought he was talking. But yeah, there's some things that I'm like, dang, if I would have done that, like I would have had, you know,
Yeah.
so much. But it's like at the same time, I feel I had to go through that. And I was talking with Joe the other day about this, and I was like, you know what? I'm glad I went through this when I was like 23 years old, rather than some people going through this when they're freaking 35, 40 years. Some people never go through it to learn that, like, holy shit, if I didn't do this, I could have bought this investments, or I could have put money in this fund or done this or that. You know what I mean? So learning that at a really young age was my reflection of positivity on it. And it's like, okay, yeah, I had all my fun last year. I did all these crazy trips, blah, blah, blah. Now it's time to be smart with my success, you know? And that's kind of where I was with all of that.
Yeah,
But I had to go through that, because
Yeah.
it's one thing for someone to say, no, don't do it. And you're like, hell no. Like, I want to go out here and I want to go to Vegas. I want to buy these cool cars and do all this cool stuff because I was in a position to do it. But it's like, once you have it, you're like,
Yeah. It
All
takes
right.
me back to like what my favorite teaching from Jack is, you know, everything's an equation. You just got to learn to when to subtract, add, divide, or multiply.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the most powerful statements that he ever taught. And money wise, you know, look at all the success that you've had or whatever. But one of his biggest things is like, it's not how much water, but how much water you can reserve. And I
That's
think
what it is.
I spent my whole life with like an open dam. Like when I really look back at how much money I've made and what I've done, and then I'm like, you know, it takes me back to Kevin Goldberg. He used to always tell me, if you don't got $300 to invest in your life, what the hell are you doing? He used to tell me that. And at that time I worked for Fender, and I'm like, how the fuck do I not have $300 to invest in my life? And it's bothered me, you know? So
Yeah.
now I always try to have like some sort of leverage, but that's when it goes back to what
Yeah.
Jack says. Like, when do you add, subtract?
Yeah,
multiply,
for sure.
you
And
know?
I said, I was, I was kind of kicking myself when I had to get all my tax stuff ready for this year. And I was like, seeing everything I spent, and I was like, oh my God, this is freaking ridiculous. If I didn't do any of this, I would have had this freaking huge chunk, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To invest in and go buy property or put it in funds or certain things like that. And me and Aiden, we had a lazy day today. We went shopping and stuff. I didn't have no appointments or anything. And we're looking around, and I was like, freaking $60 for these sweatpants, $100 here, $100 there. And I'm like, this is freaking crazy. I was like, this is exactly why people have this issue, you know what I mean? Or they don't have the $300 to put in. It's because even clothes, if you want a pair of Nike sweatpants, it's going to be like $100.
Yeah.
But most people don't know. You can go to JCPenney or Dillard's, what we ended up doing, and you can go get some Nike stuff at.
Like $20.
Yeah, exactly. This may not be the latest and greatest, but it's still, you know what I mean? And it's about knowing that small stuff, which comes with the experience, and not getting caught up in all the hype of everyone's excitement, you know what I mean? And that's where so much kids, even now, they'll go in and buy these pair of Yeezys for $400, and it's like that was their whole check. And then they're wondering why they're still living at home, or then they're wondering why they're not doing bigger things. They want it, but they don't want to go and pay the $5 at Target for a t-shirt. You know what I mean? It's just that thing you have to kind of go through, I feel, and sacrifices you have to make.
I didn't know Target had $5 t-shirts.
They do. They do. They got sale racks. We were looking for sale racks all day today, and we didn't hardly see nothing. I was like, I guess it's because of COVID.
So Jack, are you there?
I'm listening to you guys.
Okay.
I'm
Anything?
excited. I think that.
Go ahead.
Well, one of the things I'm listening to you guys, and that's what you guys are saying is pretty much what we talked about the resources. But what you're doing is maximizing knowledge, right? You're taking knowledge and you're taking experience, and when those two things meet, it's one of the most dangerous tools you can ever have in your life. Now, I'm going to walk you through a very elementary situation. Okay, I give you a shovel, and I say, go dig a hole. All right, you start trying digging a hole, but you don't realize that if you say, okay, well, what kind of hole am I digging? Am I digging in sand? Am I digging on top of grass? Or I'm going to put a post. So you say, well, you know what? I'm going to use a shovel just to dig the top, and then I'm going to use a post hole digger. Or I'm going to loosen up the soil with a pick or something. But you don't know that at first. And so that's when that experience kicks in, and then your knowledge is more honed, right? And that's exactly what you were talking about the last 10 minutes. I think that then when you're able to do that, now you have that. Now when you're maximizing the resources that you have around you with a knowledgeable mind, so it's kind of like me. I have a lot of access to a lot of good people, right? I got doctors in my camp. I got accountants in my camp. I got lawyers in my camp. I got bankers in my camp. I got spiritual leaders in my camp. I got politicians in my camp. Well, imagine when I know when to call them. So this is what people fuck up a lot of. You come in and you have the guy who's the expert as the doctor, and you're calling him, asking him how to fix your plumbing. And now he's looking at you like, why the fuck would you call me for the plumbing issue? You just wasted my time. You understand what I'm trying to say? And that's where I call it, that's where that experience and that knowledge comes in place. And how do I utilize your resources? The other thing is, what are you going to bring to that resource in order for them to want to help you? And I don't know how many times, and we've talked about this in multiple podcasts, is when people come to me and say, well, I'm a huge resource. Well, as the general, I am a massive resource for you in multiple facets, right? I startups in business, financially, there's a lot for me to list. But I'm a huge, I would be myself a large whale in the water for your resources. But what are you going to bring to me in order for me to want for me to use to help you with my resources? And we talk about that, and it's just kind of business truth 101. A lot of individuals don't want to bring anything to the table. They want to sit there and hope the resources comes to them. And it always has to be a win-win. And that's the biggest portion. But what I want to kind of segue with towards the end here, we're able to put that picture up of Warren Buffett
Yeah.
that quote that I sent you, John?
Let me get it now.
You have it up?
I will. Yeah, there it is. Yeah. So let me
Read that for us.
So this is a quote from a tweet from Warren Buffett that says, "Money is not the root of all evil." It says, "Money reveals your inner character." Okay. If you were an asshole before money, well, you're a bigger one now. Okay. Were you a kind person before money? Well, you're probably a kinder one now. Money doesn't make you; it exposes you. You know. So
That's so good.
So I want to touch on that, right? You know, here we are. You know, I'm sitting here dealing with a few people, and I'm listening to them, and I even in the beginning, I was like, "Oh, is money evil?" And I'm thinking, money's not the evil thing. Money's a fucking resource. It's the individual behind it that makes it look a certain type of way. A shovel could be evil if I cut your head with it. And so it all goes down to what I'm talking about. Money is not evil. Money is just a resource. But if you start thinking that in your mind and polluting your mind and heart in that, you're never going to achieve it. Because why? It's like having a kitty. If you try to kick the kitty, is the kitty going to want to come to you? No. You got to pull out the bowl of milk. You got to defend it. Same thing with money. Money's a resource. And so you got to start to understand. Well, let's talk about water, right? If I get the water and I start pouring it on the concrete and expect something to grow out of it, well, then I just wasted the resource. And I think one of the biggest things that most people get involved in is with money is they'll get a little bit of it and then they'll want to either, they kind of want to hide it, or it's bad, or it made me do this and it made me do that. And I'm like, no, you're already a fucking idiot to begin with. It didn't make you do anything. It just gave you the opportunity to go to the next level. I was talking today with one of my good friends, again, Simon Derrick, and gave him a story of Allen Iverson, right? How he's going to go down spending $100 million, and how he pretty much changed the NBA in kind of like the dress codes and stuff. But ultimately, what he was doing is he thought he was a resource, but actually the resource was the game of basketball, but he became a bad person for that piece of it. And so you can never apply that or you're going to have a complete loss. And it goes back to, again, who are the people around you that are going to be the phenomenal resource for you? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over the years is like, it really wasn't the job titles or anything I held. It was really the size of my network that really changed the game for me. I'm super grateful for my networking ability and to really see how many resources I have in the relationship that I have with them, I think is more than like a money value in a sense, if that makes sense, because our resources are just as important as our skills, for sure. That's a big thing, it's like you could be skillful. Like there's a guy that lives out in Gallina or Coyote, and he's half blind, and he's incredible. He paints like these realistic scenes on like dead animal skulls, but no one even knows his work because he doesn't have the resources. He doesn't have internet. He doesn't have a cell phone. He doesn't even have access to the outside world. So like, look at this guy, and then I go to Santa Fe and I see artists that they're like, okay, but it's because they have the resources. And so here's this talented, untouched artist that just lacks the resource where, I mean, he's still like warming up water on the stove. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To take a fucking bath. And yet I see the same type of work he's selling for like 50 grand by these Santa Fe downtown people. So it really goes to like, it doesn't really matter. Your resources are just as valuable as your skills,
And it's about going out and getting them too. You can't just expect a resource to come to you. You got to go and knock walls down and go out and seek out and go out and network and be proactive, and a networking aspect and talking to the younger kids that are probably saying, how do I find these resources? How do I find someone who's willing to invest time in me? It's go out and bring value to those people. No one's just going to say, oh yeah, I'll help you, get to this level, or I'll just give you $10,000, $20,000 to start a business. Hell no. How are you bringing value to these people to make sure they're getting a return on their investment and time too? And that's what I think a lot of people lack. They're so quick to say, yeah, let's go to coffee and let's do this and let's do that. And it's like, okay, well, now I'm risking 30, possibly an hour of my time to hear your story. And how do I know it's going to benefit me or not be a complete waste? You know what I mean? Because my time is valuable too. And so is everyone else's. And, when you have so much, And then, yeah, you do want to give back, but how do you know it's going to be like Jack says, pouring in the concrete or pouring in the grass? And that's what it's about. If you think of our time as our water, how are we reserving that as well, but also making sure we put it in the right areas,
Absolutely.
you know?
And I think one of the things you got to be mindful, guys, honestly, I give a lot of charity, but you can never get your resource confused with charity. When you give something, you don't expect anything in return, right? So you get these guys or gals that are coming, and you're like, you're not going to do shit. But when we're helping the souls, or we're helping a kid, or like, so we're talking with Aiden, like you see him, okay, let me teach you this, let me teach you that. And you're giving that kid that gift, and you're not really expecting anything, but he maximizes it. You're like, holy shit, I deposited it to the universe. And that's one thing I'm talking about. So one of the big things when you're playing the big boy game, in my world, money's a resource, right? And it's a limited resource depending on who you are. So you got $100,000 in the bank, that's a fucking very limited resource, right? You got a couple of million, it's still going to be limited resource. And so you start getting to hundreds of millions, and there's a lot of excess resource, but you're just not going to apply it. But you start buying hundreds of million price tag items, and that resource is going to go quickly, right? And I think that's where you start to say, okay, where am I going to apply my time? And one of the things that I've learned over the years, it's a lot harder to make money in my world by the hour or by the time that I used to, because I used to print money. Literally, I used to print money in the early 08 to 2015. You know what I mean? And so you start to realize, okay, shit, how am I going to maximize that resource? So now instead of planting in the soil that I used to plant to grow corn, I got to grow some other crop. And that's what I've been out here brain scheming and saying, okay, I did this in technology, I took it to the next level, but now I have to harvest something else. And so we started talking to one of my friends, and Carson can attest to this. And he says, I built a $6 million house. And I said, let me just correct you like that. You think you built a $6 million house. But when you think about that, it's based on what the market said. So if you go and you build a $6 million house where there's only $250,000 homes, what's that going to do? What's that going to happen, Carson? What are you going to evaluate that house at?
Yeah, 250.
You're fucked.
Yeah, suffers from regression.
That's what I'm talking about, where the knowledge comes in. And so at the end of the day, you hear these things saying, never had the biggest house on the block. Well, because you're setting the fucking market and you're never going to be able to sell, and it all depends what's around you. And so when people use those loose numbers, like, well, I got this and I got that, and it's worth this, it's worth what somebody's willing to write a check for.
Exactly.
But and the guys who are writing checks are looking at the empirical data around them. And that's where you don't want to ever get emotion behind fucking spending your resource and anything you do. Time, emotion, any of that. And so that's one thing that I think that I've started to master very well, is not getting myself emotionally convicted when I'm going to spend the money on my resources.
Mm-hmm.
I love that, though. It's so crazy to know that the knowledge of how to use your resources could really fundamentally change your game. That's something that is never taught. It's so crazy because the things that make you successful are never taught in school.
Yeah, right.
Like when I really look back and think about things, just like while you were speaking, Jack, I just started going through my head and I was like, okay, because I'm at like this point in my road where I'm at, I could crossroad and there's 4 ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, what would Jack do at this road? And I really think about it because programming from my past makes me want to go to comfortability.
Yeah.
Right? Programming from my recent past of entrepreneurship says, go the unpaved path, right? But then Jack comes to mind, and it's just like, look at all the past. What's really, really look at them and what really goes. So it's like, now I don't even know what path, like I'm waiting for that, that knowledge to come in of how I decide how I go the next way. Because when I look at how I am and I look at how talented I am, opportunity is not an issue. It's how am I resourcing my time? And that is my hardest part. Battling ADHD as an adult, being an entrepreneur, not having anybody over me to tell me what to do. It becomes a very big testament of like, how bad do I want it? And what am I willing to do to accomplish it? And nobody can do it for me. People can show me, but no one can do it for me, you know? So it's just like right now I'm really battling my self-talk, you know? I'm really, you know, collecting everything. I'm going back and okay, what have I learned? And like I always try to channel Jack, like what would Jack do if he was me? You know, like what if money wasn't an issue? What if this and that? Like I'm like running through all these scenarios, but it goes back to, you know, like my mindset. And I feel like a biggest lack was like body wise. And I know that's our next topic but like now I'm pushing my body to like mental capacities that I haven't done since I was a high school athlete.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I'm not doing it for anybody. And it's just like the hardest challenge when you're training for a fight or you're training for a win or you're training, you know, to be the best person in your business nationwide. That's different because there's kind of like an end goal, right? That other people's perceptions are involved in. But when you're on a walk where I'm at right now, like no one gives a shit what I'm doing, you know, unless it affects them. No one does. You know, when I'm there at 5 o'clock in the morning and I did 11 miles on the damn bike, I started questioning like, everybody's asleep. Like, why am I here freezing? You know, but it was because I wanted.
And that's what it is.
I decided.
And that's what I've preached on hundreds of podcasts because I went through that so much, and I was trying to, you know, get stuff and prove to people like, yeah, I'm killing it. I'm successful. I told everyone I'd do it. And still all it's done when I've like shown people or tried to throw it in people's faces, they just get mad. Yeah. And then it made me feel like, dang, I'm a piece of shit or something. Like, I don't even know why I want this stuff anymore. And I caught myself and I'm like, okay, now I need to do like what I want to do. And now I have different goals, but it's like those things I've said, I've had to go through because no one cares. They only care if you're doing terrible, right? You know, they'll act like they're there for you, or they'll talk shit or do whatever. And then once you're doing well, then they're like I said, when we talked last week or the week before, they don't want to send business to me. They think I'm making too much money already. I don't need it, you know, different stuff like that. And it's like, well, that's not really, you know, it's just a crazy ordeal. It's a crazy ordeal. But anyway, one thing I wanted to bring up is I've seen this comic, kind of talking about what you're talking about. And it's a guy, he's squatting weight, right? And it shows his mind is like crying, like screaming, like, give up. And the body is like ready to go. Like it's a comic of the mind and the body, and the body's ready to keep going. But the mind is quitting, so he drops the weight. And the body, and they show another comic of the mind being with like a piece of tape on his mouth, and the body's just like pushing the weight up like nothing. And it's when being pushed to that capacity without your mental state getting involved in putting you an invisible boundary. Yeah. You know what I mean? And when you can master that, that's when you are able to hit greatness, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
You know? And that's one thing, like I was watching this interview of Kobe. I don't know if I brought it up last time, but he said one thing he wanted to do is he like admired Michael Myers, right? Because he's like, when he put that mask on, he had like no emotion, you know, it was just like stone cold killer. And before, I don't know if anyone knows this, but before his games, he said he would listen to the Michael Myers theme song on repeat. And some of the players were like, dude, what the hell is wrong? Why are you listening to this? And he's like, when I put my mask on, I'm in Michael Myers mode. And that's really, you know, he would detach his mental state and go into just like stone cold killer like Michael Myers was, right? And he would do that in terms of basketball. And that's one thing, when you can detach your mind from any of these crying or complaints or victimization or whatever the case, and you just go to the task at hand like a stone cold killer, you're going to achieve it and be a beast. You know what I mean?
I love that.
Not say to go, don't, and no one go kill anyone. But
I mentioned this to Jack before he left and we were out there. And I was like, you know, cars have governors, right? And like the car's capable of going 150. We put that governor on it where it just can't go. And it's like, if we learn how to disconnect from that, you know, mind and governor, then we hit our full capacity. But I'll tell you firsthand, when I was running the 4 miles a day for 30 days, there was times that I caught me jumping off the treadmill and putting my legs on the side. And I didn't even know I did it because my mind was like, stop. But my body could physically go. So I
Mhm.
started catching myself doing that.
Yeah.
And it was so mind-boggling that my fucking mind was trying to get in the way of my 4 miles. And like I had to be like, no.
Mhm.
No, so every
Yeah.
time I felt like I was gonna jump off, I'd hit the speed more because then I couldn't jump off because
Right.
my legs were going so fast. And it was like I finally, probably 3 weeks into this thing, I broke that fucking voice in my head. And it was the biggest battle I've
That's
ever.
what it is.
Yeah, and
That's what it
after
is.
that became greatness for me. After
Mhm.
that, I started doing 5 miles in 50 minutes.
Yeah, that's
No.
what it is. And one thing I want to say too is this morning, me and Aiden go to the gym, right? And I do fasted cardio in the morning, and then I'll hit weights in the afternoon. And what I like to do is do pull-ups before I start, because pull-ups get me, I don't know why, maybe it gets my blood pumping, I guess, right? But I get like pumped up and I get a bunch of energy after doing pull-ups. So every day I try to do them, and I do them because they're hard as hell. A lot of people can't do them. So I'm making this guy do them. And he's like, oh, shit. It's like, I freaking hate these. And I was like, yeah, hurry up and do them. And I'll tell him, I'll say, I don't care, because you'll see when he gets tired and he'll give. And I'm like, dude, you need to go till you can't pull yourself at all, till you come back down. And that's when you go to failure, or when you detach that, that's when you start achieving things. And I learned that in lifting weights kind of this year. And when I would start feeling pain, I would just be like, it's only pain. And now this year, I've seen my strength skyrocket up. You know what I mean? My bench was weak. Now I'm almost going to hit 305. And for me, that's a big deal, because I'm like, I only weigh like maybe 190 pounds. And it's just been that mental state that I've really practiced in saying, it's only pain, just push it up. Boom. And I'm getting that, you know what I mean? And my strength has just gone numbers high. But that's just to go and prove that the mind to body is completely different. And you set those capabilities and boundaries on yourself.
Coaching for 26 years, I've used that phrase all the time, that your body will go so much farther than your mind will.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
just don't go too far and go to Snap City is what I like to say.
Yeah.
Go to Snap City.
That's one of the things I learned recently is like, you have to rest.
Yeah, you got to.
I thought me working out hardcore 7 days a week did
No
good
way.
until my body started eating its own muscle. And then I'm like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
There's a science to this.
There's and that's with anything. You could just tell someone, like we've talked about that before. You see guys on Instagram and they're like, yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. I worked 16 hours today. And it's like, okay, well, you're bragging about working 16 hours every day, but there's still no results. So are you doing the diet? Are you lifting? Are you resting? Because that's part of the result.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Different things like that. And that goes to every single thing that you do in life. You know what I mean? Even down to how you make the bed, how you do the laundry, you're putting the clothes up, they're wrinkled. Oh, okay, well, you're doing all your laundry, right? But your clothes are wrinkled. You know what I mean? Different stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
It's an accumulation of patterns.
It is.
What do you think, Jack, about body? What wise stuff you got for us?
About what, Nikki?
About the body. What were you going to teach us about the body today?
The body starts where the mind begins. And what Carson was talking about, like, I'm a very strong mind person, and but I think when you're giving up, you're wasting that mental resource, and then the body just follows. And so I think one of the big things we talked about is wherever the mind starts and ends is where your body's going to start and end. And so if you can't control your mind function, the body's going to be there. We're talking about working out, or that's just anything in life. And so the mind is the most powerful tool you got. That's why when I tell people, if you're out there smoking the roof off all the time, you just damage the most valuable resource you have, and that's your mind, right? You think about this: your most valuable resource is your mind. Second is time, and then you start to build the financial resource. And so in the mind party, like what Carson's talking about, I mean, I used to do some pretty crazy shit, right? When he's talking based on weight. I mean, in my top of my career, at 205 pounds, I was benching 455. And when people would go and see that, they'd be like, holy crap. But it started in that mind. And, he's talking about Michael Myers. I would go into a mindset, I would play ACDC, and I go into a mindset like I was going to get into a fight with the weight. Obviously, if weights can't get in a fight with me, it was clearing everything out of my mind and just going at it like very savage, right? So this is a major challenge, psyching yourself up. The blood flow goes up, the endorphins go up. And so I think that's it. But I think ultimately what the majority of people are doing is wasting that mental resource by fucking playing video games and not doing shit with it. And that's where if you start to tune your mind, everything is achievable. As long as you don't have a physical element that's going to hold you back. But I mean, there's been studies of people using their minds to kill their bodies. I mean, there's a big story about an international guy that we actually met years ago, where he was paraplegic, and he told his body that he was going to walk one day, and now he's walking, and doctors couldn't explain it. So if you just can continue to be very steady and control your mind and just stick at it, you're going to achieve anything. It doesn't matter what's going to be.
Yeah.
That's the biggest key factor that you got, period, of anything. It's a resource. So what I want to be able to do is end off with that. Is ultimately, guys, your listeners out there, is your ultimate resource is your mind. So if you're out screwing it up by doing alcohol, drugs, watching TV, doing frivolous shit that doesn't make any sense, you need to start conditioning your mind to do things. And that's why you want to go to the weight room, so you can condition your mind so you do the pull-ups, you don't give up. And that's so fucking huge for all success. Because I've actually conditioned my mind since I was a child to just maximize anything that I'm going to do, no matter what it is. And so that's what I got. The team's got. Great podcast, guys. Like I said, beautiful weather. I'm out here in Cabo San Lucas, sitting on my patio, looking out to the ocean. But
Living your best life.
I busted out my beanie.
I shoveled snow off
And
my
you know-
RV.
well,
You know what? It's
I'm
funny.
gonna
Go ahead.
like I said, I'm gonna have to hit you with a heavy story over here. Just keep your eyes out.
This morning I thought about you because I was like, I wonder what he's doing right now. And I woke up and I saw this snow. And I don't know if you guys know, but I hate being cold.
Mhm.
It makes me grumpy. And I just don't like it. And so I was like, here's my uncomfortability. Like, how do I utilize this resource? And I told my mom, post on the neighborhood thing and tell them I'll charge them $30 to shovel their driveway. You know,
Yeah.
like in my mind, I was like, because I don't like it doesn't mean I can't, prosper
Yeah,
from it.
yeah.
Money
And so then I was outside and it was already melting. And I was like, oh, well, I should have did this shit yesterday,
Yeah.
But I thought about you, Jack, because I was like, he's out there in paradise. I'm going to make this shit paradise. I'm going to make my wallet fat,
Yeah, that's what it is.
We miss you,
That's
though.
That's it. I'm gonna be back, baby.
Thanks everybody.
So
for
John might he's gonna confirm next Tuesday, but I asked if he can get that done, but it's gonna be exciting.
Yeah, no, that'll be good.
All right, guys.
Yeah, and thank you everybody for bearing with
We're out.
technical difficulties. We're here live at the grill. Remember, all throughout, no matter what town you're in, support your local businesses, order some carry out, help those small mom and pop stores, let's keep this thing going, so everybody stay out there and stay safe, and you have a safe trip back, Jack. Thank you.
Yes, sir. See you guys next week.
Have a good one.
All right. Thank you.
All right, guys.